Hello everyone, and welcome to this video where we're going to be talking about the fishing update, specifically what the commercial fishing update could look like. Now, the developers asked the community to give ideas of what we'd like to see for fishing and specifically the commercial update, and I engaged my Discord community, my YouTube channel. I scoured. I didn't want to make a video too fast or too rushed. I wanted to gather all the ideas and evidence. And now I have a good amount of ideas that I'm going to present to the developers and to all the viewers watching. Place your information and your ideas in the comments because, of course, if the developers look at this, they may look at the comments as well. So, with that said, I want to say that the fishing update that came out, the fishing rod update, has been awesome. It introduced the physics, it introduced fish behavior, a bunch of stuff, and a game like Stormworks that is heavily marine oriented. I mean, I think the basis of Stormworks is the marine setting. I think fishing is a super important part of that marine nature, and I think that with a little bit of work, the developers can make Stormworks into a game that has a really intricate and awesome fishing update and fishing side of things that we honestly think would make things that much more awesome here. So without further ado, let's begin. How I want to break down this video pretty much consists of going through some of the ideas that my Discord server people had and my YouTube channel, and pretty much with that talk about the various types of things that we could see in the update. The major commercial fishing update, I'm going to call it, because we did get this update for the fishing rod. It's called major. A lot of people agreed it wasn't quite major. It was more like the framework that can establish a really awesome update. So I'm going to first talk about some things that can be added to the fishing game and fishing side of things regardless. And after that, I'm going to talk about the different types of commercial fishing that we could see here. So the first one would be a fish finder. A lot of different people talked about fish finders. Obviously, we have a variety of different types of displays and radars and sonars currently in the game. It would be really nice to get a fish finder that would pretty much be an array that can be mounted to the underside of the ship, just like a sonar unit. And what it will do in essence is it will make the game get us, the game read on a display, on a screen, fish. However, it would only tell you the density of fish and the depth. So if we have a whale, kind of like the one following us, or shark, versus if we had a bunch of small fish, like a school of fish, or a larger fish, we wouldn't really see the difference. The display would just tell us that there's something down there, and then you'd have to investigate and explore to determine what exactly that is. So the fish finder would be display formed, and the display can be anything like this or even like this, but I just think that it would pretty much register on a map in essence. Kind of like, well, we are seeing the shark on this, as you can see there, or that land. But anyways, it would register that there's something down there and that you could then explore and find the perfect fishing grounds. Now, talking about fishing grounds, it would be really nice to have a randomized kind of fishing, fish locations and fish depths and stuff. So what I'm talking about is there's going to be rare fish that cost more, that are harder to find. Maybe they're at a deeper depth, so you have to search at a deeper depth. Maybe they are in specific places, so you have to kind of scavenge the islands and find where this one specific type of fish lives. And of course you'll sell them for more money, so it makes it a little bit harder. They're a little harder to come by. Now, I do know that they already introduced a variety of species in the game here, and with that variety of different species that they placed, I personally don't know if different types of fish sell for more or for less, but what I do know is that they did introduce different types and you can end up finding them. So with that type of thought in mind, I think having a mini game style reeling in, kind of like you see in some other games. I know other Far Cry has fishing, and I think Grand Theft Auto or Red Dead Redemption, there's certain games that have fishing elements where when you are reeling in the fish, you have to almost struggle for it. Like if that one's pulling to the right, you have to pull to the left, and that type of thing. It's not just that it's going to come to you no matter what. So I definitely think that if we had a little mini game that would make certain types of fish either more rare or harder to catch. So if you're just commercial or sorry, if you're just recreational fishing like I'm here, you know, a bigger type of fish is harder to reel in, and of course it may get you more money. Now if you are more so commercial fishing and you have like a trawler, it's eventually going to be more difficult to catch certain types of fish. So that type of thing will end up making a little bit of difference, and with that, either harder to find fish or more like difficult to reel in, will add a little extra element to the fishing side of things, to the game, and that will also open up the idea for having sort of a fishing trophy. So it's a block that you could place in your building or in your ship. So we could have a little block maybe right here that is all in essence just a like a inventory style thing, but instead of being this type of like this dot, maybe it just looks like a piece of wood, and then you can put your prized fish on it. So like the fish I just caught, you can actually place on the wall, and in essence you could look at it and show off to your friends and all that good stuff, the fish that you caught, and it's pretty much just a trophy. So that would be really neat to see in fishing trawlers or in land-based fishing operations or houses or fishing cottages or boats, that you could have sort of a little fishing trophy. Of course, the fish finder would require some rework for fish to travel in schools of fish and potentially not kind of run away scatter when a boat comes, or at least scatter in a combined uniform type of method. So I definitely think that some rework would have to be done, but we already have radar physics that catch if there's a boat or something in the horizon or nearby, so I think it's not a far stretch to think we could get a fish finder that can tell us that type of thing. Now, another aspect that was quite interesting that someone mentioned was fish handling. So say you do catch a fish and you now have that fish in your hand, there's different ways you can store it. Currently we only have kind of the hopper system, so you could put your fish in the hopper and it kind of instantly kills it and it just becomes dead for you to then sell. But of course, I think if we had a couple of different ways to store it, that may encourage further fishing and or building of creations that will be much more fun. And with that comes a few ideas. So fish handling, how do you store it? So we can have a live tank. So say you have a boat with an actual aquarium in it or a live tank, you throw your live fish in there, they stay alive in the tank, and you can go and sell them directly from the fish selling point alive. And you'd pretty much just put your fish, the hopper scoop or hopper vacuum thing, directly on your live tank, and it vacuums up the fish and they're alive, therefore making you the most amount of money. So that would be definitely one option, the best option, let's call it. Then you can have other things. So you have a hopper, which would keep the fish fresh the least amount. Then you can have even a fish freezer. So it'd be really neat to have a freezer. Currently we have the heaters and the furnaces and stuff like that. So it'd be really neat to have freezers, so the opposite type of system where you can in essence cool an area and have it cooled such that it will freeze the fish, and with the fish frozen it sells for more or it stays fresh for longer. So it'd be neat to be able to in essence foul your whole catch. Like if you end up making your fish go rotten, then they're worth nothing. So you place a bunch of fish in the hopper, again, like I said, keeping them fresh in theory the least. If you take forever to get to your selling point, your fish is not worth anything, it's garbage. The freezer would keep it fresh for a longer time, and it would be interesting to kind of add that extra aspect into the game. I definitely think that that would also encourage, you know, either building an aquarium or building kind of the cooler. So it'd have some refrigerant, a compressor, you can cool off that chamber and make it make your fish fresh longer. Now that would also help encourage other things in the game, like having a nice cool engine room that is also, you know, not overheating and stuff. So having the coolant and refrigerant and compressor style type of build would really add to that level of detail that the game can have in general. So I think that that is kind of neat. The next level of kind of fish processing, let's call it, would be to actually have a fish processor that cuts them up and puts them in boxes, or a fish packer that takes it and packs it in boxes. Now, whether you'd put that on your boat or whether you'd make a land-based facility, that would be the next level also, and then you could put your fish in a truck and carry it to the sell points. It would be quite neat. Just looking at the map, if they added these types of, like how we have an oil platform that you could build on the water, it would be neat to give us a couple of coastal locations where you could build a fish processing plant. And ideally, it would have access to a road, so kind of like in this area, and maybe like 2 of them on the map, just like we have the oil rigs in the South Island. And you'd be able to then bring your boat to your own fishing facility, which you'd build, and then using a series of these hoppers or conveyors or whatever, you'd be able to put the fish, again, either in a processing plant or in a packer, and put it into a box that then in essence just gets driven or transported to the sell point. That would make you the most amount of money. So there's just different levels of taking this game. So you could either have your fish, you know, in the hopper, you could put them in a freezer, you can put them in a live tank, sell them alive, you can pack them, package them, just giving you a wide variety and a wide range of things to potentially build in the game and potentially utilize with this fishing update. And I know a lot of you are probably the most interested in what exactly does the commercial fishing update give us in terms of actually collecting the fish. So I do have several different methods that the lovely people on my Discord server and YouTube and myself created ideas of, and I'm going to go through that now with you. So the first one is obviously nets. That is probably one of the most common ways to catch fish. There's tons of photos of trawlers on the internet and stuff like that. So having a net-based system is a for sure thing that has to be added with the commercial fishing update. So the nets themselves can be made a number of ways, but the way I kind of see that would be the easiest and best would probably be to have a fish net in your building inventory. So when you're actually in the workshop, it would be a fish net, and I think that it would be the most logical to kind of start off like the parachute type of inventory item we have that kind of just grows based off of your block. So in this case, what you'd look like is the parachute part would go here, and you'd be able to connect to a button that you'd have access to that can in essence deploy the net. Now that net would be drop deployed just like the parachute, and it would hang just like you see here. And what it would then give you is it would have the ability to collect fish inside that sort of net or parachute, and you would then end up being able to take that and actually deposit into your boat. So you'd kind of swing it over like this, and you'd swing it over your hopper, and then you'd have your button to press to deploy. So maybe it would have 2 nodes. It would have the deploy net where it actually opens up, and it would have kind of like a drop, and you'd press that and boom, your fish drop into your hopper system ready for pickup. So that would be one of the alternatives, or one of the ways. Now some other people on my Discord server were actually mentioning a pre-built blocks that have a 3x3 hatch on them and 2 rope anchors on the other end. So the actual net itself would be separate from your boat rather than being a parachute style inventory attached to the end of this rod. It would actually be down there, and it would just be attached with 2 ropes, let's call it, to a winch or a pulley system. So this actually gives you the ability to use that awesome pulley system we have now, and it would be really cool then. One would probably be a connector style, like electric connector style, that can give commands like drop and deploy and stuff, and the other one would be the actual pulley system or pulley style rope, which you can then reel in and reel out and stuff like that. So that gives us that. Now, some kind of parts that come with having your net fishing would be that depth of your nets changes what species you can catch, and speed. If you go too slow, your nets will close up and you won't catch anything, and if you go too fast, your net in essence releases your catch and you don't bring anything. So those are styles that I could see working for the net system. And of course, I'd say there could be different size nets. You could have bigger and smaller nets, probably with different weight. So like if it's a smaller trawler, your fish net is smaller than if it's a huge trawler. It's bigger and heavier, but it could of course catch more things. So that would be the way I could see that kind of working. As far as the animation or physics go for this, it's just kind of long and empty, and as you fill up with fish, it grows to the point where it's maximum. At that point, it's also the heaviest. So if you're only catching fish on one side of your trawler, the other side's not, you're obviously going to increase the weight. So there has to be kind of a weight element added, and physics that can bring the boat kind of, you know, angle it to one side if you're having a full tank, a full net. And of course, the net could not go through pulleys. So if it is a net that deploys, like what I said for a not parachute style, the other style, it can't go through a pulley, of course. So it will drop the fish or deposit the fish before it gets to the pulley. I guess the one thing against having the parachute style inventory block, let's call it. So if I just put a parachute style here, you'd be able to deploy it from your boat and deposit it into your hopper. But the one negative is you have to kind of, well, you could also have it directly dragging on the back of your boat, but you wouldn't really be able to use your winch system. So I think having sort of a separate element that can be, or maybe it could be, so you could also have it be parachute style and it would work this way, or you could of course place it here and then separate it from your boat with a composite style connector. So I guess that could work. You'd have your composite style connector and you'd be able to then link it to your winch system, and through your winch then deploy or retract the net. So then what I had here on the side of the boat would be more for shallow style fishing, whereas if you dropped it down like this and let it sink, maybe put some weight on it, have it really fall down as steep as you can, and then kind of scavenge the seafloor or depths that may end up getting different style of fish. So I could see the system working actually. Now note that I'm not a fisherman, I don't live near the sea, I'm an oil sands person, I live in the middle of Canada, but I do research and people have told me, so I don't know all the types of fishing, but the next style of fishing would be a long line. Now for my research, pretty much it is a long line that trails behind a boat, and with that long line you can end up catching a variety of different things, and they kind of nibble on to your line, and from what I gathered, in essence, they would get caught, and you could then reel in your line and deposit the types of fish. So what I built here is sort of what I imagined as a long line. It's just my visual representation. Of course, it would have to be much, much longer. And in essence, this style of fishing would give us a new style of rope. So it would actually be called a long line. And that rope would be quite long, let's say 100 meters or 50 meters or something. You could attach multiple iterations of them, and they would be attachable to winches, to pulleys, to all that type of stuff, and rope anchors. And then in essence, you'd be able to build your own buoys that you could attach this long line to, and you don't have to drag them on your boat. You could actually stop and release your line, and it would float because you'd attach it to a buoy. This may be a better visual representation, albeit much, much longer. So you'd actually extend your cable out, like I said, 50, 100 meters, and you'd use a buoy, and you'd stop, and fish would nibble on your long line, and you would then be able to reel it in. Now, of course, different speeds and depths catch different fish as well. The long line can travel through pulleys, so you could use a pulley, for example, up above your hopper, but the fish will unhook once they hit the pulley. So maybe the pulley system could be utilized to drop the fish off the long line and into the hopper type of thing, so, or a tank or whatever. So you unload the fish that way off the line, or you reel the whole thing in through a series of cables and manually then pluck off your fish and throw them into the hopper. So a bit more work that way, but that way they would be deposited into the hopper system. Also, another idea would be to actually lower the whole long line into the hopper. Like you just kind of take it here, drag over this gantry crane over top of the hopper, and lower the whole line in with fish and all, and it would kind of act like the vacuum type of system where the fish just remove themselves from the long line, and you then pull up the long line and fish are now stored in the hoppers. So that way you can actually fish with a different type of system, use winches, pulleys, rope anchors, stuff like that, and then drive slowly and connect and fish with the long line. So that was an interesting method. I never knew about that in the past, but a little bit of research kind of brought me up to speed. Probably on very surface level speed, but good enough for me. Last but certainly not least, lobster or crab pots, where you have a cage system to catch lobsters. Now, of course, the way I can see it, there are two different ways of doing this. First, I'm going to talk about the pre-made way. So this was an awesome suggestion by one of my Discord members, and they said that you can have a pre-made trap that contains a float permanently attached on one side and a cable or rope kind of reel, and then you can deploy your crab trap or cage or whatever into the ocean and let them collect them. So you pretty much deploy the thing and leave it. And at that point, so you use the rope connector to put it onto a winch or a pulley or a gantry crane or whatever, and deploy it over the side, and then you leave it. So that's in essence what I read about this type of fishing. So you leave this thing, you deploy a bunch of them, you come back at them. So you could use a winch to pull it up, but how do you attach it? It would be interesting to see a spear gun launcher which has a rope, so you can actually come to the side of your boat and use this spear gun or like grapple kind of hook and launch it, and then once you've hit the connector with your spear gun, you could then tie it off onto your winch or your pulley and drag it up over top of your hopper or fridge or live tank or whatever. Lower the whole thing, like I said, even the earlier suggestion, imagine you could lower the whole crab trap near the hopper, and as soon as it's near the hopper, it auto deposits the fish into it. So that would kind of work. Now, what would be quite neat as well would be to have a powered pulley system, so a new piece that you can connect midpoint on the permanent rope, which lowers the float onto the deck and hoists up the trap. So you kind of just gives a different style of attachment. Instead of using a winch, you have this powered pulley and go up and down on that. Obviously connecting onto the trap and unloading your catch when you get over the hopper, or if you have a button. So I'm giving the developers a couple of different alternatives or ideas as I go through this, but I'm just kind of saying what I've read and what people have suggested and what I'm kind of thinking up some of the stuff on the spot as I discuss it with you guys. So this preset cage would have to have a release button of some kind or release mechanism. So maybe it is just like the float where you could then build on it. So you can add a button, for example. You can add certain elements to it and deploy it into sea. That is the pre-made version. Now there is a different one where we actually make custom crab traps or crab cages, and this custom style crab trap would be buildable. So what I used here is just a rail piece, but imagine you actually have a system where this type of thing is using, call it a crab cage, simply, but a crab cage piece. So it'd be just like this, and they would be very buoyant in a way that you can deploy it and they float. Now with anything like that, I know that the developers are always concerned with people exploiting things, so you'd be able to then possibly attach a bunch of crab traps to your boat and have it float. So it would have to be well thought out. Of course, we know that this floats obviously, but to not make people exploit it is sort of something to always consider. But with that said, this custom style of cage, you could then select the size, and just like a closed chamber on your boat, like where I have my gas tank and whatever, the larger you make your crab trap, the more crab it can catch, but then it gets heavier, so you have to consider your winch size, your gantry crane size, your boat not tipping over if you pick it up and it's super heavy. So you can then make it X size and it'll connect Y amount of crabs based on the size. So that's sort of the other alternative it would have to be. But again, you'd have to then place your own connector, and your cage would also have to have sort of a release button or something where it has a trap door. Maybe they would just call it a crab door or a crab trap door or something. That would be then placed on, say, the bottom of your cage. And then when you open the button, press to the button, they release into the hopper system. So this is sort of what I've read about all my awesome Discord and YouTube fans talking about, and I just want to relay it to the developers. Take it or leave it. I'm not saying these are the best ways. Maybe there's better ones. I'd love to see them in the comments, but this is sort of what I thought about on the spot. And as I was reading everything, I do think that commercial fishing will add the next level of element to the game. And of course, we have the industrial frontier, we have oil, we have coal, we have mining. So it'd be really neat to see the fishing expanded to the level of detail that we have with the coal mining and with the oil drilling, because right now those are pretty intricate systems. That's why I mentioned the fish processing or packing plant. If you could then build a land-based operation or have a big enough ship that can also pack your fish right away, that'd be cool too. So whatever the case may be, I think that there's definitely an array of systems that can be used and methods to add to the game and make fishing so epic that it won't quite become a fishing game, but I think it would definitely add to the marine setting that the game already provides us, and give us that next level of fishing that a lot of users have been wanting and craving. So I thank you all for watching. Stay tuned for more videos, for more content. Thank you so much for subscribing, for commenting, for joining my Discord server. I appreciate each and every one of you, and as always, happy Stormworksing, everyone.